Good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing today? So we're coming to you from this cold, uncomfortable DL baggage bay. So you can see we're in the baggage bay. And you're like, Brandon, why are you in the baggage bay today? Well, I'm in the baggage bay today because of this motor right here. So we've got a couple issues that we need to address. And one is replacing this motor. The easiest way to replace this motor is to pull the whole motor assembly out. With that being said, there looks like there's only 2 bolts holding it in. There's a bolt there. It's supposed to be 4. There's only 2 holding it in. They must have broke the other 2 off in the frame. We've got to get these ductworks off, left and right. And then we'll disconnect these wires. And then we'll pull this whole assembly out. So everything will come out. And then once we pull it out, we'll get it out there on the floor so that we can work on it a little easier. We've got to address this circuit breaker. The center is actually missing out of this circuit breaker. There's supposed to be a little red auto reset in the middle of that breaker. And look at the condition of this. Remember, I say it all the time, connections. Look how terrible this relay looks. So while we have it out, we'll attempt to address that too. All right. So we'll see. So like I said, the first thing we're gonna do, disconnect wire, disconnect ductwork up there and down at the bottom, and then we'll pull the whole motor out. A couple things when you're doing this job. If you're doing these right here, one, you don't want these posts to turn. So I'll get you guys close again so I can show you. See these right here? You do not want these terminals to turn inside this motor. Cause permanent damage to this motor. This motor is junk, so it's not that big of a deal today, but if you were taking this out so that you can put brushes in it or something like that, then you would make sure that you don't want to twist these terminals. So hold a wrench on this one and loosen this nut right here. Very, very important. Very, 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 very important. That will be, especially when you get into newer motors, more expensive motors. I mean, this motor is expensive enough that you don't want to mess it up. So let's grab some tools and we're gonna rip this bad boy out. First things first, let's get these this ductwork out of the way. They're 1/4 inch. And for everybody that's used to the metric system, 1/4 inch would be 7/16 socket. I mean, you could technically use 11 millimeter too, but the right socket is a 7/16. We don't work on as many D coaches as we used to. Not because we don't want to, or we're too big for our britches or anything like that. But the reason we don't get to work on them as much is because just people phasing them out. They're either going newer or they like the older. The D coaches are kind of in this weird area where they're they're not antiques yet, but they're also not what everybody wants. So what I like to do, I like to just pull these brackets. You'll pull this away, and what I'll do is I'll tuck this bracket down below without taking the other side off, and then you can pull this piece off, whoop, just like that. Set it on the right, because there is a right and a left, so try not to mix them up. Then I'll pull this piece off, just like that. And then we'll pivot and turn so you guys can see what I'm doing here. Now we need to get these wires off. Remember, this motor's junk, but if you needed to, this motor's got to have a rebuild on it. The stator's messed up in it. So what it's doing is it's pulling more amperage than the circuit allows, and it's causing the breaker to trip. There you go. And another thing you want to make sure is you want to make sure you have your batteries off. Don't try and work on this stuff. You can disconnect them for safety, but don't try and work on this stuff with the batteries hooked up. Because if something happens and this motor comes on, or something, you short out something or whatever, we don't want no loss of fingers here. I don't know about you guys, but I like my fingers. So now we're going to, it's one bolt. It's 2 bolt. Somebody must have had a nut underneath. So that means somebody's done stripped out the inserts that are in there. I don't like to mix up these wires, so what I'll do is I'll take the nut off and I'll put the nut back on, and that keeps all the resistor wires and everything. So if you're like, what's this piece right here? So this piece right here is your resistor. So this has a 2-speed motor in it. If it was a single speed, you'd only see this terminal and this terminal right here. So it'd be this one and this one. But seeing as how you see both terminals, and then you have these 2 right here, this means it's a 2-speed motor. And that's all it's doing is, when this is actuated, this relay is actuated, it's running the voltage through this resistor and only giving the motor half the voltage. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but this motor doesn't get full voltage. It's a controlled amount of voltage, because you can't overspeed these motors. So you want to have these motors controlled. You can burn them up that way. You just have to be careful with that stuff. Always refer to your wiring schematics, because it's important. A lot of people will just take the wires off, throw something on, and there's no resistor in line anywhere else to keep a controlled speed on some of these motors. You'll burn them up. So very important to keep that in mind. So now let's tuck this joker out of the way. And MCI was gracious. They knew that people would probably have to service this, so what they did is they put handles on each end. So I like to just lift up on one side, just like that. Be careful not to hit the heater core back here, this thing right here, and I like to pull it up just like that. And then what I'll do is I'll reposition myself to lift it, and we'll lift the whole thing right out in one piece, just like this. There you go. Just like that. So now we'll pick it up and I'll carry it out there. I'll carry it out here, so I'm not confined into this bay. We can, work on it a little easier. All right, I'm gonna take y'all with me, so hang on. I'm gonna put you guys on this nifty little bucket right here. Get ready. Motor's not the lightest thing in the world, so you have to make some grunting noises. I don't know if you guys can notice, but this housing is crooked. Look at the way the motor's sitting in there. It's totally sitting in there crooked. Yeah, see? So much further this one is than this one. It's totally sitting in there crooked. I'm gonna have to do something about that. Look at this too. Somebody's cut this. They cut a slot in it right there. So you're losing some air velocity right there. I don't know who did that kind of mess. But we're gonna have to do something different here. Because there's some special slots. See this slots right here? It sits in a channel. So you see this channel? And that's what latches this motor in, and that stuff's missing and messed up. So that's the reason why you can look at the width difference from here to here. It's on there crooked. Well, that was unexpected. So now we got to go out there and find another one. Because I've got the squirrel cages, but I don't have this piece right here. And putting a piece of tape on it won't last for so long before anybody says that. So I'll be right back. I'm going to see if I can find another used one out there, assembly, and we'll take apart the used assembly and see if we can, out of the two, we can make one. So I'll be right back. All right, whew. We found another one. This one's in good shape, but that one's not. So we'll take the other one that was in good shape and put it on this one. And the cages aren't in very good shape. Y'all will see when I take it apart. But the key thing is, as you could tell, it's got the bolts in it and it's straight. See that? So we'll see if we can get this plate off first, because I'm gonna use the other one, the relays and everything seem to be in better shape. So we'll see if we can get that board off. Do that first. All right, so we got that loose. Now, for the fun part. And when I say that, I don't really mean it. We're going to take this side off first. Get a ratchet to go in there. And I know it's noisy in here, I'm sorry. The heater is on and that thing is noisy. But it's like 29 degrees outside, so. We'll take these rings off so that we can slide the housing off. I like to take the housing off of one side and then try and slide the motor out of the other housing, so you don't have to take all the housings off. Because you want to kind of have a reference to put it back together so everything's kind of straight on there for the ductwork. It's one nice thing about having a scrap yard. You can go out there and You know, this motor was taken out because it was bad, wasn't worth rebuilding. But the other components were good. The squirrel cages are not worth anything, but at least the base is worth something, better than what this guy's got. I think my ratchet's getting wore out. I think it's time to get a new one. Time to retire this little ratchet. I bet this ratchet's like 10 years old. The little Sonex ratchet. It's been a pretty decent ratchet. This one right here. But the teeth are missing in it now and getting kind of old, I guess. All right, so I got another one. This one's Icon. Not a sponsor. I don't have any sponsors. Let's see how well it works. I have a bunch of Icon brand stuff. It's not bad. I have wore it out and they've discontinued them, like the ratcheting wrenches. The first ones I bought lasted a really long time and they worked good. I wore out the gears in them and I warrantied them out, and over time they just seem like they're not the same. So we need to spin it around. And the one we're taking off, this one's in good shape. It's this one we're taking off. We're replacing. Alrighty. Now what I like to do is pop these out. And the reason I don't want to slide them down in that track, because that leaves it exactly where I need it. So I'll pry these out just a little bit. Just like that. Like that, and then loosen these. Just like that. Sides out of the track, we got this one off. All right, now we'll get the other bolts out. There's this one. Now Should be able to move these rings up and hopefully shimmy this one up. Just like this. Just like that. And the bushings, we'll inspect them, make sure they're not dry rotted, cracked. These usually stay in pretty good shape. The J model ones are the ones that seem to wear out quite a bit. Yeah, that one's in good shape. We can bend these back up. All right, so we got that one off now. I'm not quite sure what this piece does right here. Some of them have them, some of them don't. They don't even show them in the parts book, this piece of trim. So I'm not quite sure what it does. The other unit that we're working on that I pulled out of the bus, I literally pulled it out of a used bus, and it doesn't have this piece on there. And this one's all corroded up and rotted in the middle, and so I'm gonna elect not to put it on there, because I mean, we've got to get this bus running tomorrow for them, and I don't have another one of those pieces. It's not something we have to put on before we put this back in. So I'll ask the customer if they want us to order the pieces that we need to put one of those on. I'll see if I can call around and see if I can find one, or call MCI and see if they can pull the build sheet on the bus and see if it's something that we can get. So that's one of the things about being in a mechanic shop, is I know that other people watch this video and they say, well, you have to put it back to the way it is. You have to spend the extra money, and I agree 100%. There's a reason they put everything on these buses, and I prefer to put things back the way they are. And in certain cases, you have to make a decision. You have to say, hey, customer, these are your options. We can order that piece and we won't get the bus done until it comes in. Do you want to use it for now until that piece comes in? Or sometimes the customer will elect not to spend the extra money, and there's nothing I can do about it. Now, I do have a firm belief that if I don't fix something correctly, if this was a safety hazard or something that would cause an issue like a brake, caliper, something detrimental to the bus, then I personally will not work on it unless it's fixed correctly. But for that piece of tin that's rotted away, and I've seen them on buses, don't see them on buses, it truly won't affect the operation of the coach. And for that, I will let the customer make the choice. Like I said, I'm not quite sure what it does. The next step is to put the new motor on. But in order to put the new motor on, we have to put keyways on the motor. And we have to put the squirrel cages on. It's very, 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 very very, 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 very important that you put the squirrel cages on the correct way. I cannot tell you how often that buses come in here that other people have worked on and they put the squirrel cages on incorrectly, okay? I cannot tell you. I would literally be richer than Donald Trump right now if I got $100 for every time I've had to do that. $100 for every time I've had to pull this motor out, swap the 2 squirrel cages, take the right and put it on the left, and put the left back on the right in order to fix it after somebody's worked on it. It's very simple. If you look at these motors, which way the squirrel cages turn. So if you look at this motor, you want air to come out here. So depending on which way the motor is rotating, you want it to rotate and throw the air up. If you have it going the other way, it's going to try and pull air from here and push it out the sides. All right, so let's look at this motor. So remember, this is the terminal. So let's look at the way the blades are, okay? And as you can tell, we're not going to reuse them because look how bent up they are. They look pretty crappy. But anyway, if they rotated this way, they won't do anything because of the way the housing is. Remember, you want air to come out this hole right here. So if this rotated this way, it's not doing anything. So you want it to take the air and throw it up. So you want this motor, the actual lips or the vanes or the fins, whatever you want to call them, on this squirrel cage to rotate and throw them up through that hole. So they have to turn this way. So they're scooping air and throwing it up. You see that? If they turn this way, so if you take this one and put it on that side and put this one on this side, they won't do that. They'll just suck air. So if you had great airflow, somebody works on your bus and they swap the squirrel cages on it, or it's changed the motor, and the motor runs, but you have no air coming out of the vents. You need to double check to make sure which way they're doing it. And the easiest way to tell if it's working correctly is to pull the ductwork off of here and put your hand over the top of it. Before I put the ductwork in, I'm going to test it. And I'm going to show you guys the way this motor is supposed to blow air. It's an easy way to test it. We'll test it before I put the ductwork in. You know, everybody makes mistakes, but testing it and finding your mistakes is the other key. You know, even I make mistakes. It only happens once in a lifetime, but I'm just kidding. I'm not perfect. Another thing is, you see these little clips? A lot of people take them off. You don't want to do that. That's what balances that squirrel cage. All right. Here is the new one. I didn't have to pull the fans off because I had these keyways in my toolbox. All right, so this goes on this side. This one goes on this side. So we got this on. All right, so now we're gonna take this new motor and stick it in just like this. What we wanna do is get it so it's back where it was, about right there. And then we wanna make sure that motor is centered in there, or that squirrel cage. so y'all can see. It looks pretty centered. See that? Both sides. That's what we want. So now we're gonna get this side completely in, then we'll worry about putting this side together. It looks already looking better. In the words of my 4-year-old daughter, this is more better. More better, more better. That's when she was 4. She's no longer 4. But it still makes me laugh. I'm putting these bolts in. Got that on. All right, so we got that. We've got it kind of in there now. Kind of close to where it's supposed to be. So now we just need to tighten everything up. We need to put those couple bolts in, or nuts on. We need to tighten the bolts on the other side. And then we also need to put the rings on and tighten all of them up and put the handles on. Then we've got to rebuild the relay module that's on the front. Got everything on except for remember on this, when you're tightening this one, because this motor is good, you want to hold these while you're tightening these. You don't want to you want to get this far and then mess it up. You want to mess it up at all, but especially not after doing all that. Oh. Nope. Let's try and get a wrench on it though. Yeah, I looked. I don't have any of those little captured nuts that go in the framework that hold this resistor plate on. You can't run a tap in there because by the time the flutes get in there, get into the threads, you've run out of room. Even with a thread chaser. All right, so we got that on. All right, so look at this breaker. Do you see that little piece in the middle? That's the auto resetter. So when this thing trips, it'll automatically reset this breaker. And you can see here's the part number on it. 7F1326. This is a 3 amp circuit breaker. All right, so put this on right here. I've got a new one of these. You can see the number on that. Compared to the one that's in terrible shape. All right, so we got that. That's one. All right, so we got it in there. Time to test it. It's gonna work, it's gonna spark, it's gonna blow up. We'll find out. remember when I said that make sure it's blowing the right way? Well, there you go. That is blowing big time out of there. We got her did. We got the blower motor changed. Sometimes it's good to have parts laying around, as you could tell. It took how many motors and brackets to make it work? A couple different relays. So I went and got this new relay. And it's got this number on it, which is the correct number, but it's different. So you can see it's got an extra terminal on it. And then the way it mounts is different too. You can see the holes are not in the same spot. They also had this wired incorrectly. So it took me a few minutes to figure out it was wrong. They had it bypassed so it would run on high speed all the time. Yeah, they had low speed bypass. So I don't know why people do that. So it took me, I was like, wait a minute, the wires can't be jumped like that. So it took me a second to figure out which ones were which. I had to go pull the schematic and look at it, but we got it figured out. It's working now. All that's left is basically putting that ductwork back on and tightening everything up, and this job is done. If this stuff is what you like, if you like these repair videos, let me know. Put it in the comments. If you don't like these repair videos and you'd rather see inspections, put it in the comments. I appreciate it. I'll see you guys on the next one.